So, first, in terms of confirmation regarding any sort of demand to pay a transaction fee, please see my public comment to the Federal Reserve regarding fees as they may be associated specifically with appraisals and how they can be used in processes of disaggregation in order to confirm both the origin of the transaction as well as that to which it is intended for deposit. Outside of a authentication and verification of such, there is absolutely nothing legitimate about any demand for a fee. With that said, hey Omar, what's going on? How are you doing? Remember when I tried to contact you? I was glad to hear your voice. As I think I mentioned, there was kind of some interference, I think, static on the line. I'm sure it wasn't the best representation that you wanted to give, and it certainly wasn't the best representation I wanted to give. But under the circumstances, it's what we had to work with. I'm calling you to follow up on what I had attempted to send you via electronic communication on the 4th of November. As you may well know, there's some dates that are coming up. At the time I sent it, I was pretty much aware of the concurrent timelines and why it was so important to get a message to you, but also to receive confirmation. It was very important that you know that that day I had sent you the specific message that I had, and it was very important that you respond to me. Now, I did not have, at that time, anything on to let me know whether or not you had actually received it. I didn't have one of those email receipt confirmation indicators. But I never heard back from you. I did, however, hear for about the next 48 to 72 hours what was done in some process with my attempt to send a message. And I understand somebody right now is attempting to misrepresent that somehow they're entitled to claim the voice, the tone, or even the content of that email for themselves. So let me read it out loud. Dear Omar Lopez, I tried to call and left two messages today. Please feel free to return the call if and when you want to. I left specific information on how to contact me on the voice message. Please confirm receipt of this email. I understand that a deadline expires tomorrow and communications will be easier to accomplish after that. I do not know if you have seen anything I have put online since we spoke, but I've recently reviewed it myself and it seems it has been pretty comprehensive. Since we talked, I believe that I have seen how that matter that was at work in Texas played out during the election, at least on one level. At some point, it got determined to position me as some sort of counterparty in a particular political hedging strategy. I do understand a methodology that was applied via campaign finance contributions listed for Deloitte, at least for this year. However, Deloitte was both the auditor of a recent Pentagon audit with three other accounting auditing firms and is also the major sponsor of a 2010 Chicago pension systems plan that is dated for what was the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. These are the crucial matters in consideration of my current and ongoing concerns. Within the last 2 months, there was an announcement concerning an optics program between L-Beats and the United States Marine Corps that was identified as originating from Fort Worth, Texas. As you may recall, there were suspect appropriations that were in the 2008 appropriations bill I showed to you and Carlos Perez. This was the very sort of matter about which I was concerned. Over 2 years ago, I found information concerning a military standards manual specifically about night vision goggles that I believe was connected to securities set up using my identity information from when I was a child aboard a military base. I've been able to make a major benchmark on what would have been the 25-year mark on the anniversary of the standards manual, which I understand would have allowed for a sort of credit that was not permitted because my efforts were obstructed, and instead, I believe, resulted in some sort of default that had consequences that have been exploited. Several times additional benchmarks came in due consideration of this. I have kept track and have a record of my efforts to communicate and report as needed. It is necessary for others to confirm a receipt of the information, and I will respond if and when I am apprised of the need to do so. For others, in order to prevent against default or accrual of default that can be leveraged for illicit purposes, as I contend the obstruction of my efforts in the former regard have been. I see no advantage in obstructing a report to an official government agency or to individuals of concern that could have provided the foundation for sustaining efforts at credit repair for a number of projects in order to leverage the defaults for financing the project discussed above. I believe that is precisely what has happened. By such leveraging, there were other defaults that were permitted to be leveraged in order to coordinate specific and distinct recapitulations of human capital access in order to effectuate a specific characterization of this project. At what cost? I contend it is far too high. It must be a direct disclosure. However, in order for me to understand there is an expectation of such otherwise, I will consider it part of the criminal concerns I am investigating. I will be direct with you as well. Additionally, as you may recall, when we were evaluating that appropriations bill, and I provided my understandings of what was ongoing with my review of the DREAM Act, there were certain matters about which I recall speaking with you having to do with the Transportation Security Administration. I have followed up on these as well in a variety of manners, including one specific to the matters mentioned in the proposed act. It is extremely relevant to the times now that this be acknowledged. I continue to follow up on and through with that on my end. I believe that there was some sort of secret litigious process that was engaged relative to your campaign and perhaps the campaigns of other members of the Green Party in Chicago during the 2008 election that was used in order to expropriate your human capital and the human capital of others involved with the campaign. I have not as of yet found the specific litigation, including what might be concurrent derivative litigation, specific to that or the actual bonds, but I do believe I have found matters that have turned over from the original bonds and later litigation that has at the least impacted me directly and may also involve you. There is a current and recent effort that I understand is connected to matters that impacted Reverend Landaverde that I believe were disabused in election interference originating in and through Texas this past election. For whom the benefits were supposed to accrue, I cannot say at this time. I suspect it is some form of party swap, and that it was intended to benefit more conservative candidates, including ones who might be more affiliated with the political sympathies of the matters about which you were concerned in 2008, regarding mistaking the Green Party in the U.S. with the Green Party in Mexico. I was not in a position to speak so thoroughly on these matters when I was last in Chicago and did not have the information I would have needed to substantiate these or other allegations. I do believe I have more than enough now. Additionally, I am concerned that I was forced into entering the psychiatric emergency services in San Francisco on the day that the Chicago Pension Systems report above was dated. I believe it was absolutely intentional, as was the forced entry of me into another psychiatric center in Houston on the 7-year anniversary, the Neuropsychiatric Center for alleged mental health observation that I attempted to report as fraud and child abuse. I am disheartened to know that there was a specifically contrived racialization involved with the events involving my need to seek assistance from various domestic violence shelters throughout Illinois and Texas. It was not just a coincidence. There was much more about this than has been acknowledged, and it absolutely is pertinent to addressing what is ongoing at this time around the alleged COVID-19 situation. I, for the record, contend that COVID-19 is not a health pandemic, but rather a biological agent engaged and distributed via acts of electronic warfare. I do what I can to try to present electronically communicated information authentically, but I am aware that for years my emails and other electronic accounts have been back-encoded with significant pornography, including pornography coded with racialized inferences. I have contacted all the appropriate authorities to rectify this. If it has not been addressed adequately, I believe that is because of the circumstances that contrived to twice subject me to illegal and illicit mental health observations that amounted to a form of administrative detention after attempting to address what I understood to be use of directed energy weapons and attempts to compel me into cooperation with illegal activities. That is a form of pension fraud under the auspices of countering extremist violence. I have let those who needed to know. It was and is on them to respond appropriately, including via their legal counsel if necessary. This is meant to be an official communication. Any effort to interfere with it should be addressed as such. Please do respond within 72 hours to confirm receipt, even if it is just to say hello. If I do not receive a response, then I will assume there has been some form of interference, regardless of whatever personal feelings you have, this is, I believe, a necessary effort in consideration of what I understand to be the facts. I, for myself, have already attempted to engage the judicial process in these regards, have made contact with necessary legislative and executive agencies, and intend to follow through on that. I will not, however, do anything else formally until after the 10th of November for a variety of reasons, other than to attempt communications of this sort as necessary or desired. After all, despite all else, I would be grateful to be able to speak with you again. I will also say that on the Monday after I attempted to contact you, I received a solicitation from the Chicago Tribune. I believe this is some way connected to my efforts to contact people in Chicago. I had already officially discontinued any electronic communications with the Tribune and understand this advertisement to be a form of benchmarking, if nothing else. Now, this was sent at 12:42 p.m. on November 4th, 2020. There's a specific voice. It's as if there's a resonance connected to this specific message. Somebody wants it now for themselves. It's not yours. This was an official communication with a congressional candidate I used to work for, who I believe was subjected to directed energy weapons after somebody tried to assassinate his brother, who would, as I understood, have been the ideal candidate for that particular congressional race, but had been intentionally incapacitated because somebody tried to murder him. Somebody targeted him with directed energy weapons in order to render him mentally incapable of being able to run for political office, and his brother stepped in order to try to promote the campaign that otherwise would have been supported by the community in his brother's attempt to run for that congressional seat. It's taken a long time, a very long time. And in the meantime, I just want you to know, I've witnessed how other people were murdered in the same manner. I did not witness directly what they did to Lopez at the time. I did not witness directly what they did to Omar Lopez at the time they attacked them. But I witnessed other people be murdered with the same techniques. There was intentional political reasons for the liquidation of those leaders at the time they were liquidated. I am not going to apologize because I'm not dead and I regain my capacities.